pull the complaint, or I will end you in this building.
No.
Pull the complaint, or I will end you in this building. She looked at him. No. He grabbed her arm and twisted. The bones snapped. She hit the floor. 37 people in that corridor. Not one of them moved. Not one of them spoke. They all stood there and watched a senior nurse go down with a broken arm, and they did nothing. She looked up at the man who broke it. Her voice didn't shake.
You just made a significant mistake.
You just made a significant mistake. He straightened his coat. He walked away. 12 meters down that corridor, a man had watched every second of it. He saw the grab. He heard the snap. He watched her hit the floor. He didn't know her. He owed her nothing. That corridor started with him not knowing her name. It did not end that way. And neither did the 6 weeks that followed. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell. New stories drop every week on this channel. Now, back to that corridor. His name was Ryu Haeon-sok, 38 years old. Chairman of the Ryu Consortium, 3 generations deep, built on information, silence, and the kind of patience that makes powerful men nervous. His brother was in room B12 with a cardiac condition. That was the only reason he was in this hospital on this Tuesday afternoon. He had watched the whole thing from 12 meters away. The approach, the grab, the snap, the fall. He didn't run to her. He didn't shout. He stood completely still under the fluorescent lights, and he assessed the man walking away, the cameras at both ends of the corridor, the 37 people who had chosen to do nothing, the 4 exits on this floor, and how many seconds it would take to cover each one. 4 seconds of assessment. Then he made one call. 7 words. He hung up. 12 minutes later, every exit in the building had 2 of his people standing near it, quiet, unremarkable. But there, every face in that corridor would be identified before they left the building. Every name, every role, all of it documented. Then he put his phone away, and he watched Adaise Okafor get herself off the floor. A nurse brought a wheelchair. She looked at it. She looked at her arm hanging at the wrong angle. She made a decision, the fast, precise kind, that only someone who works in medicine makes about their own damage, and she stood up on her own. She held the broken arm at the exact angle of someone who has mapped the fracture and chosen the position that causes the least additional harm. She walked to the treatment wing, steadily. 1 foot, then the other. He didn't follow her. He stood in that corridor, and he waited. 6 hours passed. Shifts changed. Dinner trays rolled by. The evening visiting hours came and went. The hallway lights shifted from day to night. He didn't move. Here is what you need to know about men like Ryu Hyun-seok. When something catches their attention, they don't look away until they understand it completely. At 11 that night, a night nurse quietly informed Adaise, arm freshly cast, pain medication blurring the room's edges, that the man who had been standing outside room B12 all evening had just left the building. Adaise looked at the ceiling. He stayed 6 hours, she said. Yes. Why? The nurse didn't have an answer. Neither did Adaise. But she was going to find one. Now, who was she before Tuesday? She was 30 years old. She had grown up in Baltimore. Her father was a Nigerian surgeon. Her mother was an American schoolteacher. She had become a nurse not because she couldn't become a doctor, but because she understood, very early, that nurses were the ones who actually kept people alive. Doctors made the decisions. Nurses made the decisions and caught the errors and worked the hours no one put in the headlines. She had trained at Johns Hopkins. She had been good at it in the way that matters charge nurses asked for her on the difficult cases. Patients' families called her by name at 3 in the morning because something felt wrong, and she was the one who would actually check. Then a patient died. She hadn't done it. The investigation said so. The review board said so. The death was a medication interaction the patient never disclosed. She had followed every protocol, every box checked, but the family was grieving, and grieving families need somewhere to put the weight. They told their story to a news outlet. Her name was in it, and once her name was in a story like that, it stayed. She could have remained at Johns Hopkins, but she had spent 18 months walking hallways where people looked at her like they were still deciding, and she was done being decided about. She found Jungwon Private Medical Center in Seoul, through an international staffing agency. She spoke functional Korean. The hospital needed senior trauma nurses. She needed somewhere that didn't know her name. She arrived 18 months before Tuesday. The complaint against Director Cha had begun 8 months after that. She'd noticed small things, first billing codes that didn't quite match procedures, recovery extensions that were slightly longer than the clinical notes justified. A colleague told her not to dig at things that didn't need digging. She kept looking anyway, because Ade's Okafor was not built to stop looking at something she had already started looking at. What she found was a system. Not a surgeon cutting corners. Not opportunistic fraud. A deliberately engineered machine, 12 months of surgical data, specific patients selected by insurance profile, billing codes adjusted by precise increments, recovery timelines extended by calculated amounts that added up to extra procedure days, extra billing cycles. $40 million a year, running for years before she arrived. She filed a formal complaint 6 weeks before Tuesday. That was why Cha had come for her in that corridor. 3 days after the bones snapped, she came back to work. The cast was clean and white. She arrived 2 minutes before her shift, 5:58 a.m., and found Director Cha in the lobby. He had been waiting long enough that his body had stopped believing it was temporary. He had positioned himself between the entrance and the elevator, close enough to her path that passing him required a choice. She looked at him. She looked at the distance between them. "If you come within 2 meters of me," she said, at completely normal volume, "I will start screaming and I won't stop until security arrives." He stopped. She walked past him to the elevator. She did not look back. But that afternoon, a different man arrived. Chairman Oh Byung-chul was the owner of Jungwon Private Medical Center. He came with flowers she hadn't asked for, warmth she hadn't requested, and an apology that sounded like everything and committed to nothing. He had the manner of men who have been liked on purpose for so many years that the performance looks like the real thing to most people, most of the time. He sat across from her in the hospital cafe and asked gently, apparently concerned, exactly what she had seen in the patient files that prompted her complaint. He said he wanted to understand the full picture. She told him just enough to seem cooperative. She withheld the specific data that mattered. She did it without thinking. The same instinct that had caught Cha's billing patterns told her that O's warmth arrived in exactly the wrong way. Genuine warmth is uneven. It surges and falls short because it comes from feeling rather than calculation. This warmth was even, pre-measured, exact. She thanked him for coming. She went back to her shift. That same afternoon, Hyun-sok passed her in the corridor. She was reviewing a chart left-handed, slower than usual, compensating with deliberate precision. He stopped. "You're back," he said. "Broken bones heal," she said without looking up. "Understaffed wards don't." The camera footage has been secured, copied before anyone thought to check the deletion protocols. She looked up. "Why are you doing this?" she said. "You don't know me." "I was 12 meters away," he said. "I could have been there in 4 seconds." "That's not an answer." "I was there," he said. "That means something to me." She looked at him for a long moment. This was a specific kind of man. Not the kind who performed concern. Not the kind who brought flowers and calibrated warmth. The kind who said exactly what he meant and expected the same back. "I don't know what to do with that," she said. "You don't have to do anything with it," he said. "I'm telling you the footage exists." He went to his brother's room. She stood in the corridor for a moment. She thought about a man who secured evidence before anyone knew to delete it, then stayed 6 hours in a hospital hallway for a woman he'd never spoken to. She thought about what kind of person does that. She went back to work, but she filed it. 3 days later, she arrived at her locker and found it forced open. The notebook was gone. The one where she had been rebuilding her complaint documentation by hand because digital submissions had a way of disappearing into administrative systems and not coming back. Her stethoscope was still there. The photograph of her mother was still on the door. The charger was still there. Only the notebook. Targeted. Specific. Someone who knew exactly what to take. She went to security, filed a report. The locker room footage had a 20-minute gap, 11:14 to 11:34 the previous night. A technical malfunction, they said. She wrote down the exact times and the names of both officers she spoke to. Then she went to the pharmacy storage room. 3 weeks earlier, the same instinct that had caught the billing patterns had made her produce a complete handwritten duplicate of the complaint documentation and hide it inside a surgical supply binder. The backup was intact. She sat on the floor of that storage room and worked through the full picture 12 months of surgical data, every affected patient mapped by insurance profile and expected length of stay, every billing adjustment calculated to the incremental day. This wasn't a surgeon stealing from the margins. This was architecture. Someone had designed this from the ground up, built it carefully, maintained it for years. $40 million annually. She took the documentation to Dr. Jian Sai-Bayok, head of nursing, the woman who had appeared 4 minutes after the arm snap, who had held her hand through the examination, who had filed the incident report herself, the most powerful ally Adaiz had inside the building. Jian listened carefully. She asked the right questions. She advised Adaiz to submit formally and let the investigation process handle it. 3 days later, the submission couldn't be located. Adaiz had Hyun Sok paged. She waited in the hospital cafe. He arrived in 12 minutes. The cafe smelled like burnt coffee and old plastic. The PA system murmured somewhere above them. "Someone destroyed my submission," she said. "I know," he said. It was misfiled 40 minutes after it was received from a terminal in the head of nursing office. She looked at him. "Jian," she said. "The access came from her terminal," he said carefully. "She was sitting with you at 4:47, which means she gave someone her credentials." "Yes." She looked at her coffee. She thought about the 4-minute response time on Tuesday before the incident was officially logged. She thought about the warmth, the same pre-measured quality as O's. "Find out who," she said. "Yes," he said. What she didn't know yet, what she was about to find out, was that the person pulling the strings was operating inside Ryu territory, and had been for 4 years, without permission, without a single conversation. That was not something men like Hyun Suk forgot. But first he took her to the rooftop. She was eating cold rice during her lunch break, looking at souls spread out below the hospital. He sat down nearby. He had information he could have texted. He came in person. He told her what he had found about the credential access. And then because she had asked him directly the week before, and he had told her he would tell her the truth, he told her what he was, the consortium. 3 generations, what it did and how it operated, and what his role in it was. He didn't soften it. He didn't frame it. He laid it out the way she laid out, patient data complete and without decoration. She listened without interrupting. "Why did you stay 6 hours?" she said when he finished. He was quiet for a moment. "Because you said you just made a significant mistake," he said, with a broken arm, on the floor. "And I wanted to know what kind of person says that. What kind does? The kind that doesn't need the footage to know she's going to be all right." She looked at him. Something shifted between them, not the soft beginning of a romance. Something more fundamental. The recognition of a person who has looked at you accurately and is reporting what they found, without flattery, without management. "I can live with what you are," she said. "What I can't live with is being managed. If you know something I need to know, you tell me directly." "Yes, and I'll argue with you about things that matter." "I'm counting on it," he said. She picked up her cold coffee and drank it. He watched her do it without comment. The thread between them tightened, not into romance, into something more durable, 2 people choosing trust with full knowledge of who the other is. What neither of them knew yet was how much that thread was about to be tested. Because while they were sitting on that rooftop, Chairman Oh Byung-chul was recalibrating. Hyun Seok had spent 3 weeks mapping Oh's financial operation. What he found was not just fraud, it was a criminal enterprise embedded inside Ryu territory for 4 years, built without permission, without acknowledgement, without the basic courtesy of a conversation. He went to Oh's boardroom without calling ahead. He placed 1 page of financial documentation on the table. He gave Oh 30 days to begin orderly withdrawal from Ryu territory. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a threat. He described what was already in motion. Oh maintained his warmth through the entire meeting, which was, genuinely, impressive. The moment Hyunsuk left, Oh made a phone call. He called Jae-won. Adais was in the cardiac ward when the call came through. She saw Jae-won's face through the window of his room, the specific change that happens to a person when news they have been dreading arrives and they have to decide, in real time, what to do with it. She filed it. She would think about it later. Then came the morning that started with her laboratory door standing open. She had not left it open. She never left it open. The room appeared untouched, but she had a placement system, specific angles, a careful arrangement built precisely for this moment. 3 items were fractionally off. Someone had gone through her work with professional care and left almost no trace. Almost. She photographed every displacement before she touched anything. She sent copies to 3 external locations. Then she went to find John. She laid it out simply. No anger, just facts, in order. The terminal access, the misfiling. The 4-minute response time on the day of the snap before the incident was officially logged. The laboratory. Jian tried to reframe it. Someone had accessed her terminal without her knowledge. She'd been trying to protect Adais from inside the system. You were sitting next to me at 4:47, Adais said. You couldn't have done it yourself. Which is exactly. Stop, Adais said. I'm not asking you to confess. I'm telling you I know. There's a difference. The room went quiet. The clock on the wall ticked. How long? Adais said. 6 years, John said. The warmth was gone. The performance over. Just the words. Flat and final. Why? I borrowed money during a family crisis. By the time I understood what he was, I was already inside. Too deep to come out cleanly. Adais looked at her for a long time. That's the worst kind of trap, she said. The one you walk into while telling yourself you had no choice. She left. Here is what she didn't know about men like Oh Byung-chul. They don't just buy loyalty. They manufacture it, layer by layer, over years, until the person inside the trap has forgotten there was ever an outside. Jian had forgotten. Adais had not. But the cost of Jian's 6 years was about to arrive in ways even Adais hadn't mapped yet. 4 days later, 2 men followed her home from the hospital. She noticed on the 3rd block, a blue sedan. It had matched her last 4 turns. She walked into a convenience store at a steady pace. She went to the back. She called Hyun-suk. 2 men, blue sedan. They've matched my last 4 turns. He was already moving before she finished the sentence. His people reached her in 6 minutes. The sedan disappeared. He arrived 8 minutes after that. He looked at her, checking her the way she checked patients after an incident, fast and systematic. Are you hurt? No. Are you going to tell me to come with you? No. Tell me where you want to go. She named a hotel. He took her there. He didn't come inside. 2 of his people were posted at the entrance. An hour later, she called down to the front desk. Tell the men outside there's a covered entrance on the east side, she said. It's raining. When the message reached him, something happened in his chest that had no tactical application and no strategic use. He didn't name it. He filed it. He would think about it later. She stayed 4 days. Every morning she went to the hospital. Every evening she came back. Their conversations in those 4 days became something different. She told him about Johns Hopkins, the full account, not the compressed version, the patient who died, the investigation that cleared her, the family's grief, and where it landed. The 18 months of hallways where people looked at her the wrong way. He listened without offering solutions. He received what she said with the completeness of someone who understood that some things don't need solutions. They need witness. You listen like it matters, she said one evening. It does, he said. Here is what she had started to understand about men like Ryu Haeon-sok. The more carefully they move, the more certain they already are. He was certain. She was getting there. But the thing that would break both of them open hadn't happened yet. It happened on a Wednesday morning, 7 in the morning, in the cardiac ward. She heard raised voices from Jae-won's room. She pushed the door open and found him standing. He was not supposed to be standing. IV line pulled from his arm, blood running from the insertion point, arguing with 2 of Hyun-seok's men who had appeared in the room overnight. She moved fast, got him back in the bed, reinserted the line. She looked at his face, gray, tight, the specific expression of someone who has been carrying something enormous and is finally running out of the strength to carry it. J1. What's happening? He looked at her, his eyes filled. He didn't answer. She held his hand for a moment. Then she went to find Hyun-suk. She found him in the corridor. She told him what she'd seen. He looked at his brother's closed door for a long time. Then he went inside. She waited 40 minutes. When he came out, his face had the absolute stillness of a man holding something in place that wants badly to come apart. He told her, in the hospital garden. The evening settling dark around them, city lights beginning below. 8 months. Jae-won had been feeding information about the consortium to Oh Byung-chul for 8 months. Intelligence about operations, personnel, schedules, vulnerabilities, everything Oh needed to feel confident operating in Ryu territory without permission. The cardiac episode, the one that had placed Jae-won in Jungwon, the one that had placed Hyun-seok in that corridor on that specific Tuesday, had been induced. Not by Oh as a threat, by Jae-won. He had arranged his own poisoning. A compound provided by Oh, calibrated to produce a serious but survivable cardiac event. He had placed himself in Jungwon as a patient. He had placed his brother in that corridor. Because that was the window Oh needed, and Jae-won was giving it to him. He had not known about the nurse. He had not known his brother would watch a woman's arm get snapped and stay 6 hours because of 4 words she said on a floor. He put me in that corridor, Hyun-suk said. His voice was even throughout. That evenness cost him something she could see. Yes, he could have told me. And then Jae-won's words, which Hyun-suk repeated exactly. You would have found another way to keep me. You always do. Because you love me, and you don't know how to love someone without keeping them. The garden was completely quiet. She didn't say it wasn't true. She had watched Hyun-seok with his brother, the care in it, and the control inside the care. Both things real. Both things true at the same time. She wasn't going to tell him the part that was a cage wasn't real. He was right about one thing, she said. Which thing? That you love people by keeping them. He wasn't wrong. No, he said. He wasn't. A long pause. The city below them. Are you going to let him go? The longest pause of the night. Yes, he said. That's going to cost you. Yes, I know, she said. She didn't offer to leave. He didn't suggest she should. They sat in that garden until the night was full and the city was nothing but lights in the dark below them. She stayed. That was her answer. Before any words came, she stayed. 3 weeks later, Adaiz walked into Jungwon and found police vehicles at the main entrance. Inside controlled chaos. Director Cha Min-soo was being escorted from his office by 2 officers. Security pass already deactivated. Name already removed from the surgical schedule board. 11 years of absolute authority, walking out of the building under escort. 37 people in that corridor had frozen on a Tuesday. Today they were watching him leave, and nobody was covering their face. Adaiz documented it. Photographs, timestamps, the specific faces of the people who had stood in that hallway and chosen to do nothing. Then she went to work. Cha went first. Hyun-suk had released the corridor camera footage, the footage secured before anyone thought to check the deletion protocols through a medical ethics board contact, simultaneously with Adaiz's reconstructed complaint submission. Rebuilt over 6 weeks, duplicated across 7 external locations where nobody at Jungwon could reach it. The criminal investigation opened the same morning. Auditors came in to trace the billing system. They would spend 4 months following $40 million through 11 years of records. Jeon went second. Adaiz brought Jeon's full role to the hospital board herself. The credential access, the misfiling, the laboratory. 6 years of information transfer. The financial dependency that had made her a controlled asset inside the institution, position terminated. Referred for professional review. In their final moment alone, Jeon said, I told myself I was limiting the damage from inside. Did you? Adaiz said. Sometimes, John said. Not enough. I know, Adaiz said. That's the worst kind of trap. Jeon left. Adaiz watched her go. No clean satisfaction in it. Just the complicated thing that justice actually feels like. Not triumph, not relief, but the full weight of what it cost to get here. O went last, and he went from every direction at once. Regulatory bodies, board actions, financial exposure through channels Hyun-suk had been building access to for 3 weeks. The hospital placed under administrative review. O's parent corporation removed him pending investigation within 72 hours. Hyun-suk visited him once more. He sat across from O in what used to be O's boardroom mahogany table, the city visible through floor-to-ceiling glass behind them, and he described everything that was already in motion. Every channel, every door closing, every option that no longer existed. "You came to tell me personally," O said. "Yes. Why?" "Because you built a criminal enterprise inside my territory," Hyun-seok said. "You need to know exactly whose territory it is, before you spend the next several years thinking about what you did." He stood. He left. Jae-won landed in Lisbon the same morning. Hyun-suk had arranged the transport, the exit documents, the financial settlement, the separation from the consortium structure that his brother had wanted badly enough to arrange his own poisoning for. He had done it cleanly, without condition, at significant personal cost. That evening, Adaze found out the full scale of what Hyun-suk had done. She found him. "You didn't leave anything standing," she said. "No." "Was any of that legal?" "Some of it," he said. She looked at him for a long time. This was the moment she'd known was coming, not the idea of who he was, but the full concrete reality of what he did and how he did it. "What happens to people inside your organization who betray you?" she said. He understood what she was asking. She was asking about the line, about Jae-won on one side of it, and everyone else on the other. "Jae-won landed in Lisbon this morning," he said. "I arranged the transport." She was quiet. "You let him go," she said. "He was right," Hyun-suk said. "I love people by keeping them. He needed to go, so I let him go." "That cost you?" "Yes. If it had been anyone else," she said, "not your brother, what would have happened?" He looked at her directly. "Something different," he said. "That's honest," she said. "Yes, it is." She was quiet for a moment. The hospital around them, the city outside the window. "I can live with honest," she said. "I can live with who you are. What I can't live with is being managed, being protected from what's true." "I know," he said. "I haven't managed you once." "No," she said. "You haven't." "Then," he said quietly. "Then," she said. 3 weeks later. 6 in the morning. Jungwon Private Medical Center. Cast removed. Full mobility confirmed. She was back on full duty. She walked through the entrance and the security guard said good morning, and she said good morning back, and it was completely, unremarkably a normal morning. Jae-won's room had a new patient. His name was not on the ward board. He had sent her one message, 3 words, "I'm glad you existed." She hadn't replied yet. She was thinking about what to say. The rooftop, lunch break, her food, her cold coffee, soul below her, enormous and indifferent. She heard the door. "You have no reason to be here," she said without turning. "No," Hyun-suk said. "The investigation is closed. Your brother is in Lisbon. Your business with the hospital is done." "Yes. So I'm here," he said. He sat next to her. She looked at him. "I'm not easy," she said. "I'm direct, and I argue about things that matter, and I will never pretend I don't see something I see. I know, and I drink cold coffee, and I will never belong to your world." "I'm not asking you to belong to it," he said. "I'm asking you to let me be in yours." She looked at him for a long moment. "You stayed 6 hours," she said. "Yes. For a woman you didn't know." "Yes. Why?" He looked at her. "Because you said you just made a significant mistake," he said, "with a broken arm, and I've spent 6 weeks learning that's exactly who you are, every single day." She looked at him. She put her cold coffee down. She turned toward him. He moved slowly, the way he did everything. His hand came up to her face. He looked at her. "What's the significant mistake I'm making now?" he said quietly. She looked at him. "None," she said. "This one is fine." He kissed her, not gently, with certainty. The absolute certainty of a man who stayed 6 hours in a building because he decided something mattered. Ryu Hyun-seok did not leave things that mattered. She kissed him back, fully, without qualification. When they separated, she looked at him. "You're still going to be infuriating," she said. "Yes," he said. "And I'm still going to argue with you." "I'm counting on it," he said. She picked up her cold coffee. She looked at the city. He sat next to her and looked at the city too. Her arm had healed clean. No lasting damage, full mobility. The fracture, as if it had never happened. Just a Tuesday afternoon in a corridor 12 meters wide. A man who did something unforgivable. 37 people who froze. A woman who said 4 words on the floor with a broken arm. And another man standing 12 meters away who heard those 4 words, assessed everything in 4 seconds, made 1 call, and stayed. 6 hours. Because that's who he was. And now you know why.